Get these disgusting animals off my street.
Marianne Cole spat the words like poison, her lips curling as she leaned over the white wooden fence.
Filthy, worthless trash, playing dress-up in a neighborhood they don't deserve.
Her eyes locked onto the bride.
That white dress won't make you clean, sweetheart.
A hush fell over the backyard. Music slowed, laughter died mid-breath, and standing in the center of it all, frozen in lace and silence, was Elena Brooks, her bouquet trembling in her hands.
Ma'am,
Elena's voice was soft but steady.
we're just having a wedding.
Marianne laughed. Not a normal laugh, a sharp, hollow sound.
Not for long.
Behind her, her husband Richard Cole was already dialing. His voice was calm. Too calm.
911. There's a dangerous gathering next door.
20 minutes later, red and blue lights painted the quiet suburban street. Squad cars rolled in fast. Doors slammed. Boots hit pavement. Officers marched toward the backyard like it was a crime scene. Guests stood up. Children started crying. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered loudly. But no one, not Marianne, not Richard, not even the officers themselves, knew one thing. The groom they came to humiliate was their commander. 6 hours earlier, the world had looked completely different. Calm, peaceful, hopeful. Daniel Brooks stood in front of his mirror adjusting a charcoal gray tie. His hands moved with precision. Steady, controlled. But his eyes told a different story. They lingered on his reflection longer than necessary. 35 years old, captain of the Central District, youngest in the department's history. First black man to ever hold the position. But today, none of that mattered. Today, he wasn't a captain. He wasn't a symbol. He was just a man about to marry the woman he loved. Behind him on the wall hung 2 framed photos. The first, a younger Daniel fresh out of the academy, standing beside his father, both in uniform, both smiling. His father had served 27 years on the force. A heart attack had taken him at 55, too early. Always too early. Next to it, his grandfather. Same badge, different era, different battles. 3 generations. 3 men. 1 oath. Protect a system that didn't always protect them back. Daniel reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against the frame. Wish you were here, Dad. Sunlight streamed through the window. Outside, the backyard was already transforming. A white tent stood tall, chairs lined in perfect rows, ivory ribbons tied with care, string lights wrapped around a massive oak tree. It looked like something out of a dream. Daniel and Elena had bought this house 2 years ago, a quiet colonial home on a tree-lined street. Good schools, safe neighborhood, the kind of place you build a future. They were the first black family on the block. Most neighbors had smiled, some had waved, a few had looked away, and one couple had never acknowledged them at all. The Coles, Richard and Marianne Cole. They lived next door. He was a retired corporate manager. She ran the neighborhood association newsletter. Together, they had made themselves the standards of the street. In 2 years, they filed 15 complaints against Daniel and Elena. Noise complaints, parking issues, suspicious activity. One time, they reported Elena's own car as unidentified. Every complaint was dismissed, but they never stopped. Daniel never reacted, never confronted them. Every time Elena got frustrated, he'd say the same thing. Don't give them what they want. We belong here. That's enough. Elena would shake her head and smile. You're too patient, Daniel. Maybe he was. Across town, Elena sat in front of a mirror, her wedding dress draped perfectly around her, soft white fabric, delicate lace, elegant, timeless. Her best friend adjusted a pin in her hair. You're glowing. Elena exhaled slowly. I just want today to be perfect. From the doorway, Daniel's mother, Lillian Brooks, smiled warmly. It will be. She stepped forward and kissed Elena's forehead. You're already family. Elena Brooks wasn't just a bride. She was a public defender, 5 years in courtrooms, fighting for people who couldn't afford a voice. Teenagers charged too harshly, Single mothers trapped in the system, men who looked like Daniel, men who reminded her of her own father. She met Daniel at a community forum. He spoke about police accountability. She challenged him. Hard. They argued for 40 minutes straight. He asked for her number the next day. They built something real, not perfect, but real, built on one shared belief. Justice should mean something. Back on Maple Street, a catering van pulled into the driveway. Workers unloaded trays. A florist arrived with buckets of white roses. Music equipment followed. Everything was coming together, perfectly. Next door, a curtain shifted. Richard Cole stood at the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. Marianne joined him. What now? They're throwing something, he muttered. A party? Worse. He turned slightly. A wedding. Marianne's face hardened. In this neighborhood? She watched guests arriving, laughing, smiling, celebrating. Her lips curled. With those people? Richard picked up his phone. Not for long. Marianne placed a hand on his arm, but not to stop him. Make sure they send someone serious this time. Late afternoon, 4 p.m., the backyard was full. 60 guests. Bright dresses. Sharp suits. Children laughing between rows of chairs. A string quartet played softly under the oak tree. The wedding arch stood tall, wrapped in white roses. Everything was perfect. For exactly 9 minutes. Then, Richard Cole appeared at the fence. Like a storm. No warning, no politeness, just anger. Hey! The music faltered, heads turned. Who's in charge of this mess? A few guests ignored him. Most didn't. Richard slammed his hands on the fence. I'm talking to you people. This is a residential street. You can't just throw a block party whenever you feel like it. Silence. Then, Lillian Brooks stood up. Calm, graceful, controlled, she walked toward the fence. Good afternoon, Mr. Cole, she said gently. It's my son's wedding today. You're welcome to join us. Richard stared at her like she'd insulted him. Join you? His voice dropped. I want you gone. Every word hit harder than the last. All of you. A pause. Then the line that changed everything. This isn't your kind of neighborhood. Lillian didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't react. She simply turned and walked back. But her hands were shaking. Behind her, Richard wasn't done. He scanned the crowd, every smiling face, every happy moment, and to him, it all looked wrong. This used to be a decent neighborhood, he muttered. Used to be. And then, he made the call. The lie that would bring everything crashing down. Richard Cole walked back into his house without looking over his shoulder. He didn't need to. He already knew what he had set in motion. Marianne stood waiting in the kitchen, arms folded tightly across her chest. Well? She asked. Richard pulled out his phone. Doing it now, he dialed. The line clicked. 1. What's your emergency? His voice changed instantly. Lower, controlled, urgent. Yes, I need to report a large unauthorized gathering at 214 Maple Street. He glanced out the window, watched the laughter, the music, the joy. There are at least 50, maybe 60 people here. A pause. They're loud, aggressive. The dispatcher's voice stayed calm. Can you describe what's happening, sir? Richard didn't hesitate. They're all over the property, blocking the driveway, spilling into the street. I don't recognize any of them. He let the next part sit for a second, then added it carefully. And I think I saw a weapon. Marianne's eyes flicked to him, a small, approving nod. On the other end, silence. Then, a weapon, sir? Can you describe it? Richard swallowed, pretending to think. It looked like a handgun, in someone's waistband, dark suit. He leaned closer to the window. They're not acting normal. I don't feel safe. Another pause. I have families on this street. There were no families nearby. Not close enough to matter. But the dispatcher didn't know that. We're sending units now, sir. Stay inside your home. Richard ended the call. A slow smile spread across his face. Done. Marianne moved beside him, pulling the curtain slightly. They both watched. The backyard next door. The music. The celebration. The happiness. Let's see how they explain their way out of this, she said softly. 8 minutes later, the string quartet stopped mid-note. Red and blue lights flashed across the front of the house. Then more. 2 patrol cars pulled up fast. Doors flew open. Officers stepped out with purpose, hands near their belts, eyes sharp, scanning. Assessing inside the backyard, confusion spread like a ripple. What's going on? Police? Why are they here? Children slowed, then stopped. The music died completely. Officer Mark Reynolds stepped out first, late 20s, sharp features. Controlled posture, but his jaw was tight, too tight. His hand hovered close to his holster, not on it, but close enough to matter. Behind him, Officer Sarah Bennett stepped out. Early 30s, observant, quiet. Her eyes took everything in, the chairs, the flowers, the arch, the cake, the people. This didn't look like a threat. It looked like a wedding. But Reynolds didn't pause, didn't hesitate. He walked straight through the gate, didn't knock, didn't announce himself at the door. He pushed it open and stepped onto the lawn like he owned it. 60 guests turned at once. Silence dropped like a weight. Afternoon, Reynolds said. Flat cold. We received a report of a disturbance. Possible weapons on the premises. Murmurs broke out. Confused. Nervous. A mother pulled her child closer. An older man slowly placed his hands on his knees. Visible. Non-threatening. Instinct. Lillian Brooks stood again. She smoothed her dress. Walked forward. Officer, this is my son's wedding. There's no disturbance. No weapons. Reynolds barely looked at her. His gaze moved past her, scanning faces, cataloging, judging. Ma'am, we received a specific report of a firearm. We're going to need to verify. His tone hardened. I'll need identification from the homeowner and whoever organized this event. Lillian blinked. A permit? For a wedding in our own backyard? Reynolds stepped closer. I need you to cooperate, ma'am. The word landed heavy. Cooperate, as if they had already done something wrong. From the fence, a voice cut through. Richard Cole, loud, confident, performing. Officers, over here. Reynolds turned. Richard pointed into the crowd like he was identifying suspects. That one, gray suit. He was yelling earlier. The man hadn't spoken all day, and that one near the van kept reaching into his jacket. Could have been anything. Could have been nothing. But that didn't matter. Reynolds nodded slowly, taking it all in like evidence. Behind him, Officer Bennett's brow tightened. Something felt off. Very off. Reynolds turned back, widened his stance. All right, everyone stays where they are, nobody leaves. A man in the second row stood up, tall, calm. Officer, look around. This is a wedding. Sit down, Reynolds snapped. I won't ask again. The man held his gaze, then slowly sat. Everyone understood. One wrong move, and everything could spiral. A little girl in a yellow dress started crying. Soft at first, then louder. Her mother picked her up, whispering, but her own hands were shaking. Upstairs, Elena stood by the window. Still in her dress, still waiting for her moment. Instead, she watched her wedding unravel. Flashing lights. Officers in her backyard. Guests frozen. Her future mother-in-law standing alone in front of a cop with his hand near his gun. Her bouquet slipped from her fingers. Petals scattered across the floor. Outside, Reynolds began moving through the crowd. ID, now. One by one, guest by guest. Licenses pulled out, names recorded, faces memorized. No one resisted, no one argued. Still, every single one of them was treated like a suspect. Bennett followed behind him, slower, watching. A grandmother struggling to open her purse. A teenage boy handing over a school ID. a child clinging to her father's arm. Bennett leaned closer to Reynolds. "Mark, this is a wedding." He didn't look at her. The caller said, "Weapon. Look around." "I am." "No, you're not." He stopped, turned to her, voice low. "You want to be the one who ignores a firearm report?" Silence. "You want that on your record?" Bennett didn't answer. Reynolds turned away. Decision made. He walked toward the catering van, banged hard on the side. The sound echoed. 3 guests flinched. "Open it." The head caterer stepped forward, confident, but careful. "Officer, that's our equipment. I'm searching it."
"You need a warrant." Reynolds stepped closer. "You want me to get one, or do you want to cooperate?" A pause, tension thick. The caterer looked around, at the guests, at the children. Then, she opened the van. Reynolds climbed inside, started throwing things aside, trays, containers, boxes, searching aggressively. 4 full minutes. Nothing, because there was nothing. He stepped out, said nothing, didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge, just moved on. From the fence, Richard cupped his hands. "Check under the tables, too. I saw someone hide something earlier." Another lie, another push, another escalation. And that was the moment everything shifted, because inside the house, someone had finally heard enough. Elena turned from the window. Her expression changed. No fear now. No confusion. Just resolve. She wiped her tears, lifted her dress slightly, and started walking downstairs. The back door opened. Every head turned. Elena Brooks stepped outside. White dress, veil trailing behind her, sunlight catching every thread of lace. She should have looked like a dream. Instead, she looked like a storm. Her heels clicked against the stone patio. Slow, steady, controlled. Each step louder than the last. The entire yard watched her. Guests, officers, even Richard at the fence went quiet. Officer Mark Reynolds noticed her approach. His expression didn't change, didn't soften, didn't hesitate. "Ma'am, step back," he said sharply. You're handling nothing." Her voice cut through him like glass. Clear, precise, unshaken. She stopped just a few feet away. "My name is Elena Brooks." A pause. "I'm a licensed attorney in this state." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Reynolds blinked once, just once. Elena didn't give him time to recover. "You are conducting an unlawful search based on an unverified anonymous complaint." Her tone didn't rise, didn't shake. Every word landed exactly where it needed to. "You have no warrant," she gestured toward the van. "You have no probable cause." She looked at the guests. "You have detained over 50 individuals without reasonable suspicion." Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Ma'am, and you are currently trespassing on private property without consent from the homeowner." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Elena stepped closer. Close enough that Reynolds had to actually look at her now. "Every second you remain here without legal justification," she held his gaze, "is a violation of the Fourth Amendment." From the fence, Richard's voice cut in again. Louder now. Mocking. "See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. They get aggressive." Elena didn't even turn, didn't acknowledge him. Her focus never left Reynolds. "That man has filed multiple false complaints against this household." Her voice sharpened slightly. "Not one has ever been substantiated." She tilted her head just slightly. "I suggest you reconsider the credibility of your source." Reynolds' face flushed, red creeping up his neck. His authority challenged. "Publicly. Step back," he snapped. "Now." Elena didn't move. "I'm informing you of the law. That's when it happened." From the back row, a voice spoke up. "Everything's being recorded." All eyes shifted. Marcus Reed, 21 years old. Daniel's younger cousin, standing tall, phone raised, camera steady. He had been recording for minutes, quietly, carefully, capturing everything. Reynolds turned sharply. "Hey, you, put the phone down."
Marcus didn't move. I have a legal right to record police officers in a public interaction. His voice was calm, measured, rehearsed. He knew this. Reynolds took a step forward. I said, put it down. I'm not interfering. Another step. Faster now. Last warning. Marcus adjusted his grip. Still filming. I'm not breaking any law, officer. That was enough. Reynolds closed the distance in 2 strides. Fast, aggressive. He grabbed Marcus by the wrist. Hard. The phone jerked sideways but didn't fall. Turn around. I didn't do anything. Reynolds spun him, slammed him face first against the catering van. The metal rang out loud. A sharp, violent sound. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Hands behind your back. I'm not resisting. Stop resisting. Marcus wasn't resisting. His body went still. Completely still. His cheek pressed against the hot metal. His breath uneven, eyes wide. Fear, raw and real. The cuffs snapped shut, too tight, too fast. The crowd broke. You can't do that. He didn't do anything. That's a kid. Voices rising, emotion cracking through fear. Lillian collapsed back into her chair. Her hands covering her face, her shoulders shaking. Oh my God. Oh my God. A child screamed. Louder now. Uncontrollable. Elena stepped forward, her voice sharper now. That is unlawful arrest. Reynolds pointed at her instantly. One more word, and you're next. Silence hit again. Hard, cold Officer Sarah Bennett finally moved, stepped forward. Mark. Stop. Her voice was low, but urgent. This isn't right. Back off, Bennett. He's not resisting, you know that. I said back off. The command snapped. Public final. Bennett froze, but her face said everything. She knew. This had gone too far. Reynolds grabbed his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12, requesting backup. A pause. Then, crowd is becoming hostile. The word echoed. Hostile. The crowd wasn't hostile, they were terrified. From the fence. Richard smiled. A slow, satisfied smile. He leaned toward Marianne. See? He whispered. Give them enough rope. Marianne took a sip of her drink. Eyes locked on the chaos. You think they'll shut it down? Richard's smile widened. There won't be a wedding today. He pulled out his phone again. Dialed, second call. The line clicked. Webben, what's your emergency? His voice dropped lower than before. Urgent, almost shaking. I called earlier about the gathering on Maple Street. Yes, sir, units are already on scene. I need to report something new. A pause. I just heard a gunshot. Silence. Sharp. Immediate. A gunshot, sir? Yes. Loud. Definitely a gunshot. He glanced outside. Watched guests crying. Watched Marcus on the ground in cuffs. They're getting violent. You need more units. Now. There had been no gunshot. Not even close. But the lie was enough. Back in the yard, Bennett's radio crackled. Her face drained instantly. Mark. He didn't look at her. Second call just came in. That got his attention. She swallowed. Caller reports a gunshot. Everything changed in an instant. Reynolds's hand went to his weapon, not hovering anymore. Gripping. Everyone on the ground. Panic exploded. Guests screamed. Chairs toppled. People dropped instantly. Hands over heads. Bodies pressed into the grass. Children crying. Loud. Terrified. Elena backed against the wall, her white dress dragging through dirt. Her veil caught on a rosebush and tore. Marcus lay on the ground, cuffed, breathing hard, trying not to move. Lillian knelt in the grass, whispering prayers over and over. 60 people, dressed for a wedding, now face down, like suspects, like threats. Like criminals. Inside the house, upstairs, Daniel Brooks heard everything. The shouting, the crying, the command. Get down. He stood up slowly, his heart steady, too steady. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He walked toward the door, toward the stairs, toward the sound of his world falling apart, and outside no one realized the one man who could stop all of this
was about to step into the light. Inside the house, everything sounded distant, muted, like the world had been pushed underwater. But one sound cut through, clearly his mother's voice, shaking, praying. Daniel Brooks stood at the top of the stairs. His tuxedo was perfect, tie straight, shoes polished, everything exactly how it was supposed to be, except nothing. Was everyone on the ground? The command echoed again from outside. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't run, didn't panic. He walked, slow, measured, each step deliberate, down the stairs, through the hallway, toward the back. Toward outside, the scene was chaos. Guests pressed into the grass, hands over heads, children crying into their parents' arms, Marcus face down in handcuffs, Elena against the wall, her dress-stained veil torn, Lillian kneeling, whispering prayers, and 2 officers standing over all of it, hands on their weapons. The back door opened. No one noticed at first, then a few heads turned, then more than everyone. Daniel Brooks stepped onto the patio. Silence followed him, not immediate but spreading like a wave. He took one step forward, then another. His eyes moved across the yard, taking it all in, every detail, every injustice, burning it into memory. Officer Reynolds saw him. "Hey!" His voice sharp, commanding. "Get on the ground." Daniel kept walking, didn't even slow down. "I said get down." Still, Daniel moved forward, calm, controlled, unshaken. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to matter, far enough to stay in control. "Officer," Daniel said evenly. "My name is Captain Daniel Brooks." A pause. "Central District. Badge number 4172. Reynolds let out a short laugh. Disbelieving. Mocking. "Yeah, sure," he gestured aggressively. "And I'm the commissioner. Get on the ground, now." Daniel didn't react, didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. He reached slowly into his jacket. Reynolds tensed instantly. "Don't move." His hand tightened on his weapon. "What are you reaching for?" "My phone." Daniel's voice didn't change. "Relax. I'm calling dispatch." He pulled it out. Dialed. Put it on speaker. 2 rings. 3. Then, "Dispatch." "Go ahead," Daniel spoke clearly, every word precise. "This is Captain Daniel Brooks on badge 4172. I am at my residence, 214 Maple Street. Pause, then confirm my identity to all units on scene." Silence, 3 seconds. Long enough to feel like forever. Then, Reynolds' radio crackled, loud, clear, unavoidable. "All units on scene, be advised." A pause. "Captain Daniel Brooks is confirmed at 214 Maple Street." Another beat. "The homeowner is Captain Brooks, Central District Commanding Officer." Repeat. "Captain Brooks is on scene." Silence. Total. Absolute. Reynolds didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. His hand slowly fell away from his weapon. Behind him, Bennett stepped back, her eyes wide, processing. From the driveway, a 3rd patrol car pulled up. A sergeant stepped out, mid-40s, experienced, sharp. He took 3 steps toward the yard, saw Daniel, and froze. Then instinct took over. His hand snapped to his brow. "Captain Brooks." "Sir," that was it. That moment, that shift, everything changed. Reynolds turned slowly, saw the salute, his face drained, color gone, confidence gone, control gone. Daniel didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Uncuff him. He nodded toward Marcus. Now, Reynolds didn't move. Not immediately, like his body forgot how. Daniel took 1 step closer. That was not a request. Reynolds snapped into motion, stumbled toward Marcus, hands shaking. The key slipped. Once, twice. On the 3rd try, click, the cuffs released. Marcus rolled onto his back, gasping, eyes staring at the sky, trying to process what just happened. Daniel turned, addressed the sergeant. Secure body cam and dash cam footage from both units. His voice was calm, but absolute. "Nothing gets deleted. Preserve both 911 call recordings from this address." "Yes, sir." No hesitation. No doubt. Daniel turned to Bennett. "Officer." She straightened immediately. "Yes, sir." "Did you witness the arrest of that young man?" A glance toward Marcus, then back. "Yes, sir." "Did he resist?" A pause, a choice. Her eyes flickered to Reynolds, then back to Daniel. "No, sir." Daniel nodded once. That will be noted. Then he turned slowly, deliberately toward the fence. Richard Cole was still there, but everything about him had changed. No smile, no confidence, no control. His hands gripped the fence tightly. Knuckles, pale. Marianne was gone, vanished. Inside, Daniel walked toward him, stopped just short of the fence, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. Mr. Cole. His voice was quiet, controlled. You made 2 calls today, Richard swallowed. I heard something. Daniel cut him off. The first, claiming weapons. Second, claiming a gunshot. Pause. There were no weapons. Another. Step closer. There was no gunshot. Richard's mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. You filed 2 false reports. Daniel's tone sharpened, just slightly. You fabricated a firearms threat. You triggered an armed response. He glanced back at the yard, at the people. Against 60 unarmed civilians. Richard's grip on the fence tightened. I had a right to call. You have a right to call. Daniel's voice didn't rise. But you do not have the right to lie. Silence. Heavy, unforgiving. You don't get to invent danger. Daniel held his gaze. To bring guns into a yard full of children. Richard's knees weakened. Just slightly enough to show. I suggest, Daniel said quietly, you start thinking about a lawyer. Behind him, the yard began to move again. Slowly, carefully, guests, rising, helping each other up, brushing grass from clothes, holding their children tighter. The power had shifted completely, and the man who had tried to destroy everything was now the one with nowhere to stand. Silence didn't last long, it never does. The yard slowly came back to life, but not the way it had before. Not with laughter, not with ease. This was different, heavier. People stood carefully, like the ground itself couldn't be trusted anymore. Dresses brushed clean, jackets straightened, children clung tighter to their parents. Marcus sat up slowly. His wrists were red, marked, shaking slightly as he rubbed them. Elena rushed to him first, dropping to her knees in the grass, not caring about the dirt, the dress, anything. Are you okay? Her voice cracked now. Finally. Marcus nodded, trying to steady his breathing. I didn't do anything. I know, she whispered. I know. Lillian moved next, her hand still trembling as she reached for Marcus's face. My baby. Tears fell freely now. No restraint. No composure left to hold. Across the yard, Officer Reynolds stood frozen. Still. Silent. Like a man waiting for something that hadn't hit yet. Daniel turned back toward him. Each step, slow, measured, controlled, but there was something different now. Not anger, not rage, something worse. Authority. Officer Reynolds. The name alone felt heavy. Reynolds straightened instinctively. Yes, sir. The confidence was gone. Completely. You arrived at a private residence. Daniel's voice was calm. Too calm. You observed a wedding. He gestured around. Chairs, guests, children. A pause, and you decided this was a firearms threat. Reynolds swallowed. The caller lied. Daniel didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Twice. Reynolds tried again. I was following protocol. You searched a vehicle without a warrant. Daniel stepped closer. You detained over 50 civilians without cause. Another step. You arrested a young man for exercising his legal right to record. Reynolds' eyes dropped. And when your partner advised restraint, Daniel glanced at Bennett. You ignored her. Bennett lowered her gaze, tension written all over her face. Daniel extended his hand. Your badge. Reynolds didn't move. For half a second, maybe less. But long enough for everyone to notice. That is not optional. Reynolds reached up slowly, unclipped the badge from his chest, held it for a moment, like it weighed more than it ever had before, then placed it in Daniel's hand. Your weapon. Reynolds cleared it, hands shaking slightly, grip first, just like protocol demanded, just like he had been trained. But this time, he wasn't the one in control. Daniel took both, didn't look down, didn't need to. You are relieved of duty pending investigation. A pause. The sergeant will escort you. Reynolds nodded, barely, then turned, walked across the yard, past the chairs, past the guests, past the life he had just disrupted. No one spoke as he passed. No one needed to. The car door shut. Engine started. And just like that, he was gone. Daniel turned to Bennett. She stood straight, waiting, bracing. You raised concerns. Yes, sir. You questioned the situation. Yes, sir. But you didn't act. Her composure cracked slightly. I didn't, sir. Daniel held her gaze. Knowing something is wrong and stopping it, a beat, are not the same. Her eyes shimmered. I understand. You'll be reviewed. Yes, sir. No argument, no resistance, just acceptance. Across the fence, Richard hadn't moved, not once, since Daniel spoke to him. Now, 2 additional officers approached, not aggressive, not rushed, professional, controlled. Mr. Cole, one of them said calmly, we need you to step outside. Richard blinked. Slowly, I didn't do anything. You made 2 emergency calls today. A pause, both of which are being investigated as false reports. His voice cracked. I heard something. Sir, the officer interrupted gently. Please step outside. Richard looked past them, at Daniel, at the yard, at the people, at the damage. For the first time, he looked unsure. Then he stepped out. Marianne didn't follow. She stayed inside, watching through the window. Pale, silent. Richard was guided to the front of the house. Not in cuffs, not yet, but not free either. Back in the yard, the silence returned. Different now. Not fear, not chaos. Something else. Exhaustion. Daniel turned slowly, looked at everything. The chairs knocked over, the ribbons in the dirt, the crushed flowers. The abandoned cake. This was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. Now, it looked like a crime scene. He walked back toward the center, toward Elena. She stood there. Dress stained, veil gone, eyes red, but still standing, still strong. He stopped in front of her. For a second, neither spoke. Then she reached for his hand, held it tightly. You okay? Daniel looked around. At the yard, at his family, at everything that had just happened. Then back at her. I am now. Behind them. Reverend Carter slowly stood. He brushed grass from his suit, picked up his Bible from the ground, straightened it carefully. His voice came quietly, but it carried. I believe. A pause. We have a wedding to finish. No one moved at first. Then, Lillian stood, wiped her face, straightened her hat, sat back down. One by one, guests followed, chairs lifted, placed back in rows, clothes brushed off. Children picked up, held close. The string quartet hesitated, then lifted their instruments, the first note shaky, the second stronger. The third, steady, life returning. Piece by piece, Elena looked at Daniel. Ready? Daniel glanced around once more, at everything broken, and everything still standing. Then back at her. A small nod. I've been ready. And despite everything, the wedding continued. The wedding ended just before sunset. Not the way anyone had imagined. Not perfect, not untouched, but complete. The vows were spoken, hands still trembling, voices slightly unsteady but strong enough. Rings were exchanged. Tears mixed with quiet smiles. The cake was cut, even though it leaned slightly, even though the icing carried fingerprints from the chaos. Because some things matter more than perfection. Some moments you fight to keep. And they did. 3 days later, the video surfaced. Marcus had never stopped recording. Not when he was grabbed, not when he was slammed, not even when the cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The footage was raw, unedited, real. It showed everything. The ID checks, the search, the fear. Elena in her wedding dress, standing firm, quoting the law. And Daniel, calm, controlled, taking command. But one moment stood above all the others. The radio voice. Captain Daniel Brooks is on scene. That single line spread everywhere. Within hours, millions of views. Within days, national attention. News channels replayed it. Legal experts debated it. People argued, shared, reacted. One question echoed again and again: how did this happen? Internal affairs didn't need long. The truth was already there. Body cam footage, dispatch recordings, dozens of witnesses, everything lined up. Every second told the same story. Officer Mark Reynolds was suspended immediately, then terminated, but it didn't stop there. Past complaints resurfaced. Old reports reopened. Patterns emerged that had once been ignored. This time they weren't. Charges followed. Unlawful detention, assault, abuse of authority. The trial was quick but heavy. Marcus took the stand. His voice steady even if his hands weren't. I told him I wasn't resisting. A pause. He didn't listen. The footage played, again and again. No one in the courtroom could deny it. The verdict came fast: guilty, 14 months in jail, 3 years probation, a permanent ban from law enforcement. The badge was gone for good. But the man who started it all faced something worse. Richard Cole. His 911 calls were played in court. Every word, every lie. The first call, painting a wedding as danger. The second, claiming a gunshot that never happened. Then came the history. 15 complaints against Daniel and Elena, all dismissed. Then records of previous residents, same pattern, same accusations, same targets. It wasn't fear. It was intent. His defense tried to argue concern, tried to frame it as misunderstanding, but the evidence didn't move. The jury saw it clearly. Verdict, guilty. Felony false reporting. Endangerment. Civil rights violations. The sentence was heavy. 2 years in federal prison, 3 years probation, a permanent criminal record, and a lifetime restraining order. No contact with the Brooks family. Ever again, Marianne wasn't there. She had already left. Divorce papers filed weeks earlier. Then came the civil case. Daniel and Elena stood side by side. Not as victims, as people demanding accountability. The jury awarded $500,000 in damages. Everything Richard had gone. His house sold. His savings drained. A lifetime of control replaced with consequences. The new owners moved in quietly. A young black family. 2 children. New beginnings where bitterness once lived. Marcus changed after that day. Before, he wanted to be a prosecutor. After, he chose a different path. Civil rights law. I want to stand where she stood, he said once. In the hardest moment and not back down. Officer Bennett stayed on the force. But she carried the moment with her. She started speaking at training sessions. Not as a hero, but as someone who learned too late. If something is wrong, she told new officers, saying nothing is still a choice. Daniel was promoted months later, deputy chief. Not because of what happened that day, but because of what he built after. Stronger policies, better accountability, real change. Elena opened a legal aid center, free representation, for people who didn't have a voice. She named it after Lillian, because strength like that deserved to be remembered. 6 months later, the backyard looked different. The light stayed up permanently now. A small garden grew along the fence. Tomatoes, basil, sunflowers stretching toward the sky. Next door, laughter. Children playing. Life continuing. Inside the house, a wedding photo hung on the wall. Daniel and Elena smiling. You couldn't see the dirt on the dress, or the torn veil, or the fear that once filled that yard. But they remembered, because it wasn't just a wedding. It was a moment that tried to break them and didn't. They brought fear to that yard. They brought lies. They brought power used the wrong way. But the music still played. The vows were still spoken. And truth didn't stay silent. This kind of story isn't rare. Different place. Different names, same pattern. The real question isn't whether it can happen. It's what people do when it does. Do they speak? Do they act? Do they stand up? Or do they stay quiet and let it happen again?